Remember the food pyramid? You can probably imagine in your head, but here's a picture of it, right? So there's this wide base, right, and this narrow pointy top, and there's these horizontal layers that have these sections that detail, how many servings of each food group that you need to consume each day, right? The amount and everything. So you've got fruits, grains, dairy, all these stuff, right? And so the food pyramid told you to eat more vegetables and consume way less sugar. But aside from these disappointing conclusions, right? I like sugar, I'm sure you do as well. The food pyramid gives a balanced look at a healthy diet, right? And I think that's something we probably all could practice more. I know I need to, for sure. And I wonder, what's your favorite kind of food, and what's your least favorite kind of food? I love steak. Steak's one of my favorites. My least favorite, spaghetti. I don't like spaghetti that much, but anyway, that's a little information about me. But according to the food pyramid, right, a person who eats one or two food groups with the exclusion of others, they miss out on some important nutrients. And while this is true physically, spiritually, we can only be fed meaningfully from one source, and that's the bread of life. So in today's session, we're going to examine, Jesus's probably one of his most famous miracles, the feeding of the 5,000. With compassion and foresight, Jesus, he worked through his disciples to meet the physical needs of thousands of people who were following him at that time. And so this miracle amazed the crowd, but Jesus took the opportunity to show the people that their deepest need could not be satisfied by mere bread, that they needed the bread of life. They needed Jesus himself. So today we're going to be in John chapter 6, and we're going to start in verses 4 through 10. So if you want to turn there, I'm going to read it along. You can see it on the screen. Now the Passover, the feast of the Jews, was at hand. Lifting up his eyes then, and seeing that a large crowd was coming toward him, Jesus said to Philip, "Where are we to buy bread, so that these people may eat?" And he said this to test him, for he himself knew what he would do. And Philip answered him, 200 denarii worth of bread would not be enough for each of them to get even a little bit. One of his disciples, Andrew, Simon Peter's brother, said to him, "There's a boy here who has 5 barley loaves and 2 fish, but what are they for so many?" And Jesus said, "Have the people sit down." Now there was much grass in the place, so the men sat down, but 5,000 in number. So at this point, Jesus' fame and popularity had grown tremendously, and he had all these crowds following him, looking to be healed from their sicknesses. But Jesus at this point thought of these people's hunger, right? And we all know, food, it's a basic need that we all have. And so hunger, it's not an ailment, right, to be healed, but a requirement to be filled. And so not only did Jesus concern himself with the people's hunger, he took the initiative to meet their need. Think about this. The Son of God, Jesus, who at this point knows where he's going. He's going to the cross. He's going to that place to offer the forgiveness of sins. And along the way, he notices the physical needs and made plans to meet those thousands of needs for those people. Too often we think that Jesus just cares exclusively about our souls, but man, he is into the nitty-gritty, if you will. He cares about us on so many different levels. In the Sermon on the Mount, Jesus addressed this fact whenever he talked about the birds of the field and the lilies of the field, right? And how he clothes them and provides for them and cares for them. And he talks about how he's going to do that for his children as well. And so Jesus probably could have fed, all these people right away by speaking bread into existence, turning stones into it or whatever. But instead, he invited others into his work to be a part of what he was about to do. And so he asked Philip, one of his disciples, who was a local, who knew about the area, and said, "Hey, what are we going to do?" And Philip knew whatever they did, it was going to be expensive. And so Andrew, who's this other disciple, found a boy who had this simple lunch, right? That was not going to go far. He had fish and bread, and it wasn't even enough to feed even a portion of them. But Jesus still took the time to invite his disciples in and see what he was about to do. It's interesting. Oftentimes, we're the means in which God meets answers to prayers, that he uses us to be a part of his kingdom work. And God, he moves in mysterious ways, but often provides for his people through his people as they love their neighbors. So how are you meeting your neighbor's needs today? Let's continue. We're going to pick up in verse 11 and go through 14. Jesus then took the loaves, and when he had given thanks, he distributed them to those who were seated. So also the fish, as much as they wanted. And when they had eaten their fill, they were full, right? He told his disciples, gather up the leftover fragments that nothing may be lost. So they gathered them up and filled 12 baskets with the fragments from the 5 barley loaves left by those who had already had their fill. And when the people saw the sign that he had done, they said, this is indeed the prophet who is to come into the world. You know, the Bible is full of so many stories of where God takes little things and makes so much more of them through his power. I mean, the boys' lunch in this story was pretty trivial, right? The barley was what the poor people used to make their bread, right? And furthermore, the loaves that day weren't the kind of loaves that we would buy at the grocery store. Rather, they were more like the size of like a biscuit, right? And the fish were probably small morsels of pickled fish used on a condiment. And so the food in this story isn't even on the level that we would often think that it is. And then on top of that, the story talks about how there were 5,000 men. It doesn't include the children or the women. And all he had were these 5 biscuits, right? And some fish jam, right? For 5,000 people to eat, which just, it wasn't enough. But Jesus does the impossible. He took this meager meal and he multiplied it into this fantastic feast, which is just the nature of God and who he is, that he uses little things to do great things. And he puts confidence in what we have to offer whenever we obey him. When we humbly submit ourselves to the hands of Jesus, knowing that what we have to offer is never too meager for him to make useful. I want another question to be offered to you that I want you to stop and pause and think about. What are some areas in your life that Jesus could use to be a blessing to both you and others? Now, he performed this miracle, which was amazing, right? But it has to be noted that the same people who he fed that day got hungry the next day and they sought out Jesus again. Now, imagine, he fed all these people, but it may have not have been the best meal, or maybe it was. I don't know. Maybe it tasted fantastic. But regardless of that, of the amazing taste, of the cost, or how full you were after that meal, you were going to get hungry again. And so here Jesus teaches on this point. We're going to continue reading in verses 26 and 27, and then we're going to skip over to 32 through 35. Jesus answered them, truly, truly, I say to you, you are seeking me, not because you saw signs, but because you ate your fill of the loaves. Do not work for the food that perishes, but for the food that endures to eternal life, which the Son of Man will give to you. For on him God the Father has set his seal. Jump over to 32. It says, Jesus then said to them, truly, truly, I say to you, it was not Moses who gave you the bread from heaven, but my Father gives you the true bread from heaven. For the bread of God is he who comes down from heaven and gives life to the world. They said to him, Sir, give us this bread always. And Jesus said to them, I am the bread of life. Whoever comes to me shall not hunger, and whoever believes in me shall never thirst. The food that we hunger for never fully satisfies. We could eat a steak, the best steak that you've ever had, but it's never going to fill you entirely. You're going to be hungry again. I can eat it at 5 o'clock for dinner, and by like 7 or 8, I'm hungry again, right? It doesn't make sense, but I just am. And so the things that we buy in this world, that we build and look for meaning in our lives, it eventually it fades. And so this gnawing hunger that drives us keeps us coming back and demanding more and more and more, and we are never satisfied. And so Jesus, he told those who were listening to, who were following him, and he tells us even today that we should not chase after the things that are going to perish, but to go for the eternal bread that satisfies forever. The crowd, the Jewish people, they were hoping for something like the manna that God provided for the Israelites when they were in the desert, where they had it every single day. And that's in Exodus chapter 16 if you want to read that story. But God fed and he sustained his people daily for 40 years with manna. And so the crowd, they were looking for a miracle like this, which they attributed to Moses, right? But they were searching for the wrong kind of bread. Jesus didn't come primarily to give bread, but to be the bread. He is the bread from God that lasts forever, that satisfies our deepest hunger and gives life. So how do we get this bread? The crowd had the same question, and Jesus' answer was simple. He is the bread of life. And so come to him and believe in him. And so the question is this, it's what is the danger of coming to God for what he can give and not for who he is? May you be challenged by that this week.